Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to have you at Camp Adventure 4. We're on 4. And today is a special day because I have two of my first original Connecting the Dots clients with me. Welcome, Craig and Hannah Pickerill.
Hi, everybody.
So Craig and Hannah, let's start out with just introducing you guys, telling what you both do, and a little bit about your family.
You want to start or let me start?
You can start.
Well, my name's Craig. I am a video production company owner. I run my own business, as well as I have a coaching and e-course platform where I help God-driven entrepreneurs just kind of unlock those hidden things that God puts, well, not hidden, but those things that God puts on our heart, or those visions that we have that we don't know how to turn them into something tangible. And I help walk that through them and help that turn into something that they can take action on. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. We have two little girls, Ellie and Shay, who, as of this recording, are 4 and 6. And yeah, we currently live in Central Oregon. When we first met you, we were moving from California to Oregon. So it's fairly new, still a little bit of a transition, but nothing compared to when we started with you.
Yeah. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I am a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. That was a big transition when we first moved here. For my oldest Shay, she just was in kindergarten this year. So that was a big change. And I'm currently in the transition of starting my own business. I'm currently doing like vlogs and videos with my girls and baking, and just giving tips and ideas, like holistic tips and ideas, to help make your being healthy and happy in all seasons of life. So that's
currently love it. And that's simple, yeah. Natured mama, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's what we're currently doing. So.
Yeah. Awesome. So since we talked about that, I was looking at the calendar the other day and I realized our very first session we ever had was the first Tuesday in August 2019. So can you guys take us back a little bit on the backstory when we first met? What was going on and what were you hoping to accomplish by sitting down with me and working with me?
So yeah, it's funny. We were in several transitions when we connected because we were physically going from California to Oregon, and all of our family support is in California. So we're moving to a place where we only know like 2 people, we barely see them anyway. So it's not like we have a system here. My industry is, quote unquote, in California, not up here. So it was transitioning, finding out how to work. Plus I was idea that God had given me on helping entrepreneurs, like I'd mentioned before, and I wasn't sure how it all glued together. So going through that, as well as being, up to our ears in student loan debt and all of that stuff. So when we connected, I thought when we first went in, I was like, cool, we're going to have someone who's going to come in and help us map out our finances. And, that's all we need. That's it. And, we'll be good. And then we'll just, take off from there. And, little did I know that when we connected, there was so much more that comes with, like, even just all the stuff you have to do before even mapping out your finances and everything like that, because there's so much attached to it, and God really wants to prepare us. So then by the time we do cross that bridge, that it's more fruitful rather than just starting on something and having a higher chance of failing. It's setting up that long-term lifestyle and legacy versus that kind of quick fix, patch the hole in the boat, and then just keep try to row to shore fast enough before you sink.
Yeah, and Hannah, so like when I look back, it's so awesome for me because I can really remember where we were and to see the amazing progress. And I think what helped really give me the courage and to launch Connecting the Dots, that piece, kind of the sister of everything, because I realized how much it was needed. Mm-hmm. So can you share a little bit about maybe where you were exactly at when we started, and maybe a couple of things, one particular time mapping that you have seen victory already in?
Yeah, so we had moved here in July and from California where I lived my whole life. And so we moved here in July and then we started talking with you in August. And so backstory, my mom passed away 5 years ago, just this April. And I was pregnant with my youngest daughter during that time. And if you would have asked me when we first started talking, if you would ask me, am I fine? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Totally fine. I'm fine. I miss my mom, yeah, but I'm fine. I really was not fine. So it was just interesting, the transition that I went through, because my mom's birthday was in September, and Jodi, you happened to be here during that time, and it just so happened to work out, and it was great and how we did that. But everything kind of just hit me all of a sudden, because I feel like I wanted, like, it was a big move for us moving to Oregon, like really big move. And I missed my mom even more, and moving away from family and friends. And it would just, I didn't realize how much I was pushing down my grief. Yeah. And I was angry. I was an angry person, and my pushing down my grief turned into anger, and I didn't realize that. And so I started a grief share group, which Jodi recommended. I had never even heard about it, and it just so happened that it was starting like the next week after she had mentioned it. So anyways, long story short, we made the time for me to go every Wednesday night, and then I was able to work through everything. It was one of the hardest things I've gone through than losing my mom, because it was like losing her all over again, but I had to push through it. And I'm so glad I did. So a lot of stuff got brought up with that, especially my business, my Simple Natured Mama. I mean, just, I'm trying to be the joy that my mom was, and to just live on her legacy through that, and just bring joy to people, and hope and encouragement and tips and recipes and baking. She loved it. So it's just great to be able to share that with my girls. So it was a big thing. So much change.
Yeah. You know what? As you said that, Hannah, I just remembered, and what my hope was is for people to get an idea of what time mapping or a goal may be for them. And sometimes it looks different for each person. And so I love what you were sharing, Craig. And then for you, Hannah, really, it was about getting your joy back. As we talked, I remembered one of the big things that was coming up was you always, I hope this is okay to share, but I remember immediately we were having one of our very first sessions, and we were sharing about you and Craig and what did you love about each other. And you said something that Craig always, I believe he said it in your vows.
Yeah.
And I think you shared it with me. If you want to share it now, because I feel like maybe even somebody watching that is trying to set up something to time map so that they can move out of what they're doing and shift the pattern, this might help.
Yeah. So 2 out of the 3 words to describe me, he used kind and playful. And I'm still working on becoming more of that, but I was not kind or playful in the time we were in. Our marriage has gone through quite a lot, especially with my very difficult pregnancies and a very high needs second child who sealed the deal for being our last. But no, we love them, but it was a very, very long, probably 3 years of our marriage, very early on. We've been married almost 9 years. So 8 years, 9. Like 2011 we got married. So it was just, anyways, it was difficult. So those 2 words really hit me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not very kind or playful right now. Like that's sad to me that he would describe me like that. And those are 2 words that I would not describe myself as. So, and he wouldn't either right now. So yeah, I mean, it was just kind of getting back to that and being somebody that he wants to be around, my girls want to be around, even though they love me no matter what, which I love, but I want I don't want to scar them, which I'm working on. So anyways, yeah. So those are the two.
No, I love that you share that, and thank you for sharing your heart, because I know that those aren't things that are easy, but it was why I was so grateful that you guys are willing, and you're going to be on a couple of more of the camps that we're going to share even more. But I love that you shared that, because that is why we are putting these together, so people can watch them and learn, because of the breakthrough and the progress that I even have seen with my own eyes, seeing what has accomplished for the people that have worked on it. Because the one thing that I think with time mapping is we don't know, we normally have even like almost made, we don't realize it, but an agreement with ourselves that that's just going to be how it's always going to be. Mm-hmm. So once we accomplish and realize that, and I think in our next meeting that we had, and just to clarify for any of you guys that are watching, Craig and Hannah, I call them my ultimates. So we do meet every single week for about a 90-minute session. They're just like Odin and Michelle. And so that's why I wanted to bring both of these couples on, because they're both on kind of Hannah and Michelle, Hannah and Craig, we have been working on this for a while, and the time mapping is a little newer for Odin and Michelle, because we had some of the other programs I work with them to move through. But for you guys, we started with time mapping. It was actually kind of one of the breakthroughs. So I was on camp 3, we discussed the prep that you have to do once you've realized that it was important, and the tracking. So can you guys we established what the goal you wanted to accomplish, and you knew that maybe you needed to deal with the grief. But do you guys remember how we kind of laid it out in the prep work to be able to do that?
Totally. And yeah, and one thing I want to state too for those watching and going through this process and learning is, like, especially for me, like having my own business and even having to be accountable to myself for doing, contract work, is I always had to be very structured and give myself deadlines. And, I had to map out my time business-wise very well. Otherwise, it was easy to fall behind, and then I wouldn't get other clients. But when it came to my life, I tend to be more, we'll figure it out as we go. Kind of the opposite of my work life, whereas Hannah definitely wants to know what's happening every minute of every day. And I'm
oh my gosh, you guys are just like Odin and Michelle. They shared the same exact thing. That in his work, he's really structured, but in this process, he's realized in the other part, his wife Michelle was really like structured, and he kind of be like, "Hey, let's just."
Yeah, and a big thing I've learned from this, especially from what Hannah went through when our first thing that we were going to time map was, okay, on Wednesdays from this time to this time is her grief group, as well as like when they meet after. So I'll be with the girls, prep dinner, I'll do all this stuff and like time that out. But it was interesting to see how when I do that for our personal life, how much more freer that makes us. Because in my mind, it's like, well, we'll figure out what happens when we get there. And to me, that feels more free. But in actuality, like having certain things planned now helps both of us, because we both know, oh, here's when the dentist appointment is, here's when this is. But when it came specifically to this, I would have never have thought time mapping could be used for grief, and then grief would lead to so much more freedom. So even if it's a personal goal that you can't name, if you even just label it as, time mapping through feelings, like, and you don't have to have a name for it. But for us, it was a big one to go through that and to block out, because it was what, 12 weeks?
Yeah, 10,
right?
12 weeks, yeah.
So, and it was, it was around like holiday time as well. So, planning that out and what that looked like and how I pushed my work schedule, and then the next big one after that was for her, after she was able to unlock all of that and go through that process, which we wouldn't have been able to if we didn't actually sit down as a family, plan out that time and just stick to it and really just push through it. But the other one was like, okay, so we have our kids and we have homeschool. Our oldest also goes to charter school once a week. They had swim lessons at the time. You have all of this stuff. And then anyone with older kids knows like ballet.
Yeah, we kept navigating that and adding and building on that. And one thing I'm remembering, because I love what you say, Craig, and that's what I'm hoping is people will do one. It could even be to just make the time to journal and redream again. But the second one I remember for you, Hannah, was to you have family that lives up there, Craig, and of course they're family to Hannah too, but I know that one of the other things was to find a place to connect for a Bible study. So do you remember that? So we were planning both of them at the same time, and how would that work out? And so being intentional with that, I don't even think at the time, and we'll unpack this in another one of the series, but understanding that Hannah's love language, one of them was acts of service. So you intentionally following through with this and doing this and mapping it, the goal that you had, which was you wanted to have your wife back. I mean, you guys have, not very many people go through what you go through, Hannah. I mean, you guys got married, you had your first child, your mom was battling and fighting cancer, and I'm going to try you, and it's interesting how God connected us, because I lost my dad young, so I was able to recognize it because I knew what had happened. But I think that whether it's this trauma of grief or something happens that does not look like the plan, you get married, you get the kids, you get the job, you get whatever it is, and something completely shifts that is very overwhelming. And I don't even think people fully captured what you said. You were pregnant with your second daughter when you lost your mom, who was one of your best friends. So it was, you were just coping. So you couldn't even get there for 5 years. And so maybe somebody has had a loss or had something that they thought they were okay with. And then now 5 or 6 years later, anger is coming up, and it's the opposite of joy, right? It's the opposite. But so it could look different, but the goal for both of you guys that it accomplished was, I started to see, even though it wasn't perfect, we had to come back to the table and look at how can we reroute it. So I'm wondering if you guys can maybe remember and something that we had to do with that was working, and then now it was time to maybe recalculate or recollaborate the plan.
Yeah, there's a few.
One of the things was, at first, when we first moved here, it's like I wanted to like get involved in everything, and I wanted to meet new people, and I wanted to do all this stuff. And I was driving the girls and me, we were driving to swim in Bend, which is only 30 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, driving there every 3 days in a row, trying to add in homeschool as much as we could in between those times. It was very exhausting. And as much as I'm so glad I did it, I met a lot of girlfriends and everything. I was done. I couldn't do anymore. I was trying to focus on building my own business, like figuring out what can I do. And so we kind of had to adjust things. We had to kind of think, okay, what's the most important thing right now? We just did it down to 1 day a week, the charter school, and it just, again, I felt like such a relief. I was like, okay, now we can focus on school at home. It's not going to be as stressful. We switched homeschool programs. We took her out of one and just kept her with one of the charter. And it just a car all the time. So yeah, I mean, that was a big thing. Yeah.
then even within that too, like you said, like she's also figuring out her business. So then
Mm-hmm.
between doing homeschool and, you know, having meals and like all of that stuff and, you know, doing just our normal day to day, then where is her time? Because I also have my normal work, plus I'm building other platforms, plus I'm helping other clients, you know. So then it was like, okay, time out. What, give her a day, what day is hers? So then I take that day off during the week, and then kids and now puppy and, you know, on her own thing. And so, you know, it's doing that juggle. So then, okay, let me move all my clients and stuff to these days. We'll shift this around. You take this. So yeah, it was, and it's like you said, like you hit things and you reroute. It's almost like a GPS. Like it's not like, you know, you map it out and then it's perfect and it's set in stone and that's how it's going to be, because life happens and things happen. And so when you pass that turn right and you're like, oh, I missed it, and it says rerouting, and so then you have to figure out, okay, how do I, you know, now navigate back to the road that we're trying to get on. It's not like, oh, I missed it, now I'm done forever. I got to turn the car off and just sit on the side of the road.
And just an example, like Tuesdays are my day, and that's when I used to bring my daughter to charter school and stay the day. And obviously she's not going there right now, and this pandemic has caused different, you know, changes. But for the most part, Tuesdays he takes the day off and he's usually with the girls and the puppy. Well, my younger daughter was, you know, not feeling that great on Tuesday. And so we had to switch around because she wanted me. And so then he's like, okay, you just have to juggle and figure out, okay, is there another day during the week he can kind of switch around that I can still have my time, or do we have to wait till next week or whatever. So you just have to kind of play around with however it works.
So that's awesome. And I think we're going to even dive a little deeper on our next conversation. What I wanted to ask you is if you could give us, as you were talking about that, and it was the same thing that Odin and Michelle shared, which is kind of encouraging for me, because what I realize is that the time mapping is actually teaching you tools of how you recognize when something is disconnected and then reconnect again. And so something that even worked for months ago, if all of a sudden you're noticing, okay, I'm going this way, I think it's time to go off-road, right? I've driven the freeway route forever, but for some reason there's road construction there and I've got to reroute. Can you give me one tool that you've noticed that you've learned in this that helps you reroute? Because I know for myself, I think that's the hardest thing, is to, when something is working and now there's a change that has happened or something, an obstacle, something shifts and you want it to, and as we're taping this right now, we are actually in the midst of COVID-19. I think for as long as people watch this, they'll probably remember it. And so that was a perfect example. We had just rerouted a new plan and then that happened. But what I see that is amazing, and maybe you guys can give one tool, is how, even as you were sharing, you've just learned to navigate it. Where when I met you in August, that wasn't even part of your dialogue. I think you were getting stuck when that would happen and you didn't know, how do we come back and be intentional, refocus, and stay connected as a couple?
I think the connects to, I think the biggest helped, I think, like our meetings pivot is, like you said, like we are the Pickerill Corporation, you know, with like, and then all the stuff falls under it. So my business, her business, our kids, it's all under. So how do we run that and support each other together rather than it being compartmentalized? And then, like Hannah said, when things do shift and we run into those roadblocks, okay, prioritize what is important right now, what is the best for all of us, and what does that look like down the road. So even an example, like right now we have to plan the next school year's curriculum for, you know, our oldest. And so Hannah had a meeting with the team, the curriculum specialist, and we're just going over certain stuff. And then she brought up and said, okay, hey, here's our options, you know, and like, what do we think is best for her to look at? And, you know, walk that through and then make that. And then so now with that, we're able to now time map and say, okay, this is up. That's how, like, since that's the most important, obviously, is our kids. That's taken care of. Okay, then what is it for us, for our stuff? And then you just build upon that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Can you go right back to that, because you guys froze up towards the middle of it, Craig? So maybe can you just highlight again one of the tools that you're using as you're rerouting it? Just give us a little recap.
From the beginning, or did you hear the corporation part?
Yeah, we heard the corporation part.
Hannah said, like, what's the most important, and prioritizing and setting that up. So, like, an example currently, we have to plan our oldest daughter's curriculum for the next school year. So with that, she met with the curriculum specialist and the teacher at the school. And so we, she came and said, okay, here's our options. Here's what she can do. So we had to weigh out her, the way she learns, for our time, all of that stuff. Where do you want to support versus where do you want to do the full teachings? And so we had to weigh all of that out. And once we're able to do that, then we're able to map that out and be like, okay, I'm doing this, this, and this. And then Hannah can spend time doing this, this, and this. And so then we're able to start building out a new thing that we just routed to. And then what does it look like for us?
Mm-hmm.
And, will she, right now it's Tuesdays. Do we need to move that to a different day? And it's these things that we have to discuss and just keep shifting, rather than being married to something set in stone. It can never change. We have to just treat it more like Jello. Just keep it a little bit more,
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad that we tried all the stuff this last year, and we tried it in kindergarten. Now we know what works. And believe me, change is very hard for me. I don't the same thing. So when things get interrupted, does it bug me? Yeah. And does it bother me? Yeah. But I just learned to work through it, because we have to, and just getting more used to that, which is a good thing.
Okay. Sorry, guys, you just froze again. So can you share that one more time?
Which part? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Was it Hannah?
So Hannah, I think what you were saying is that you are really grateful from August, before Shay started school, you were starting something brand new that you'd never done before. She hadn't gone to kindergarten, and you were going to be a homeschool mom. So what I think you were saying is, what the time mapping has helped is, you don't like change very well. So it gives you a way to keep looking at it. And I think that's what you were speaking on, was how you don't like change.
Yeah, I don't like, I'm glad we tried everything, but I'm glad now we know it works the best. And I'm getting and reworking our schedules. It's hard, because I would rather have a consistency, and that works the best. But when it doesn't, we just kind of figure out what's going to work to get us through that week or whatever.
But does it help to now, or shifting into a schedule rather than just it being?
Oh, for sure. But not knowing makes my anxiety skyrocket. I would rather have a schedule. Like, I just do you're on the same page. The girls do better with schedules. They really do. I mean, we're not crazy. We have flexibility, and I'm not a person of knowing what to expect. Are supposed to expect.
Well, and I think one of the things that I have noticed, and maybe we'll end with just one last tip from you guys, because we'll pick up on the next one, is it goes back to what we were talking on Camp 3 about, which was kind of any person that's going to be involved in your mapping process, bringing them into it. And even when it doesn't fully work the way that you expect it, like you laid it out maybe and you tried something for 3 or 4 months, but can you guys share with us, I've noticed that you guys have gotten really good now. Even the example you told, like before, we would actually have this in our session, and we would and I'd help walk you through it. But even as you're talking right now, I'm realizing, yay, they've had opportunities that this has happened, and you guys are bringing the people that are involved, which would be both of you, since you are the head of a corporation and you're bringing the girls. So can you maybe give us how did you learn to do that? Was there something that you do to make sure that you're communicating with each other?
Well, I mean, I don't know, it just came to mind. Craig definitely lets the girls know like his schedule during the day because he works from home even before all of this happened with COVID-19 and everything. And the girls just feel like he's home, so they're just gonna go in and talk to him, even though he's busy working. So he does let them know, okay, I'm gonna be on phone calls from this time to this time. After your rest time, I get to play with you, or whatever. So they're prepared. And then so when I tell them, they're not like running into to make sure that, that's what's really happening. He already has told them that, and I just have to remind them. So try to as updated and let them know kind of what's going on as much as we can, because they love to play with him, even when he's very busy. I don't know.
Yeah, because especially depending on how big your family is, obviously, or how old like your kids are, or even if you have any, whoever you live with, I think it's really important to keep them involved, no matter how young. Our conversations on our matter and then what we have with the girls, a lot is still all connected. So I think that consistency, so they know even if something changes, the consistency is we communicate it with them and we have that thing that we're moving towards. So it's never this like stagnant thing. It's always something that we're all as a group moving towards, as a family.
And they're very nosy. They want to know what's going on. Or ask us every second. They still will ask us every second, but at least they'll kind of know what's going on.
And that is so exciting. So we're the homework for any person that for the end of this is to take some of these tools that Craig and Hannah have shared that are working for them. Give yourself a break if you've already been trying it and you're thinking, okay, because it's the process that is going to make it work. And sit down and take a look at some of the things you think that you can implement, and even if there's some ideas that you got from this. And then we will be picking this up and probably dissecting a little bit of this conversation in Camp Adventure 5. So thank you for coming on, Craig and Hannah. And just for those that are watching, we will have at least one or two more. I believe we're going to have one where Odin and Craig are going to share kind of from the guy perspective, the dad perspective, and the husband perspective of time mapping and how that worked for them. And then we're going to take the ladies and have Hannah and Michelle. And then we are also working on how we may be able to have both couples and sharing kind of some additional success stories and even some tweaks and things that they have done. So thank you guys so much for making time. And you always encourage me, and I thank you guys for making the time. So thank you very much. We'll see you on a next camp episode.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.